What if I told you that the greatest Jedi Master of all time harbored a secret fear about one of his most trusted allies? What if that fear wasn't about Palpatine or Anakin's fall to the dark side, but about someone much closer to home? Today we're going to explore one of the most fascinating and overlooked relationships in Star Wars lore, the complex dynamic between Master Yoda and Mace Windu. Through careful analysis of the films, the animated series, and expanded universe materials, we'll uncover why the wise Grand Master of the Jedi Order held such profound concerns about the creator of Vaapad. This isn't just about two powerful Force users disagreeing on philosophy. This is about fundamental questions that would ultimately shape the fate of the galaxy. To understand Yoda's fear, we must first understand what made Mace Windu so uniquely dangerous, not to the Republic, but to the very principles the Jedi Order was built upon. Mace Windu wasn't just another Jedi Master. He was arguably the most skilled lightsaber duelist of his generation, the only Jedi to master Form 7 completely, and someone who walked closer to the dark side than perhaps any other Jedi in the Order's history. But here's what made Yoda's concern so profound. Windu didn't just flirt with darkness, he weaponized it. The fear wasn't that Mace would fall to the dark side like Anakin. No. Yoda's fear was far more sophisticated, and in many ways more terrifying. It was that Mace Windu would prove you could successfully harness the dark side while remaining a Jedi, fundamentally breaking the Order's most sacred beliefs about the Force. Think about what this means. For over 1,000 years, the Jedi had taught that the dark side was seductive, corrupting, and ultimately destructive. They built their entire philosophy around the idea that once you start down that path, it will forever dominate your destiny. But Mace Windu seemed to challenge this core belief every single day. In the expanded universe materials, we learn that Yoda had been watching Windu's development with growing unease since his early days as a Padawan. Young Mace showed an unusual affinity for aggressive combat forms and a troubling tendency to channel his emotions, particularly anger and frustration, into his fighting style. The crystallization of Yoda's fear came with Mace Windu's creation of Vaapad, the seventh and most dangerous form of lightsaber combat. To understand why this terrified Yoda, we need to understand what Vaapad actually represented. Vaapad wasn't just a fighting technique, it was a philosophical statement. Traditional Jedi combat forms were designed around defense, redirection, and minimal necessary force. Vaapad was different. It required the practitioner to embrace their inner darkness, to channel negative emotions like anger and aggression, and to create a feedback loop with their opponent's dark side energy. Imagine explaining this to Yoda. "Master, I've created a new lightsaber form that requires me to tap into the dark side, but don't worry, I can control it." For someone who had spent 900 years teaching that the dark side was inherently corrupting, this must have sounded like absolute heresy. But here's what made it even worse. Vaapad worked. Mace Windu became one of the most formidable warriors in Jedi history, precisely because he could harness energies that other Jedi feared to touch. He proved repeatedly that he could walk right up to the edge of the abyss and not fall in. The expanded universe tells us that Yoda spent countless hours in meditation trying to understand how this was possible. Was Windu simply more disciplined than other Jedi? Was he fundamentally different in some way? Or was he slowly being corrupted in ways too subtle to detect? The tension between Yoda and Mace Windu went far beyond lightsaber techniques. It represented a fundamental philosophical schism about the very nature of the Force itself. Yoda represented the traditional Jedi path: patience, serenity, complete emotional control. His approach was to transcend attachment and desire, to become one with the Force through inner peace. This philosophy had served the Order for millennia and was considered the only safe path for Force users. Windu, on the other hand, represented something unprecedented, what we might call controlled integration. Instead of suppressing his darker impulses, he acknowledged them, studied them, and found ways to use them constructively. He didn't seek to eliminate his capacity for anger, he sought to master it completely. From Yoda's perspective, this wasn't just dangerous, it was potentially catastrophic. If word spread throughout the galaxy that the dark side could be safely harnessed, how many young Jedi would attempt the same thing? How many would fail, where Windu succeeded? The entire foundation of Jedi training could crumble. But there was something even more disturbing to Yoda than the practical implications. Windu's success suggested that the Jedi Order's understanding of the Force might be fundamentally incomplete. What if they had been wrong about the nature of light and dark? What if balance didn't mean choosing one over the other, but integrating both? These questions struck at the very heart of everything Yoda believed about the Force, the Jedi, and his own role as a teacher and guide. Yoda's fear about Mace Windu became even more complex when we consider the prophecy of the Chosen One. The Jedi believed that Anakin would bring balance to the Force, but what did balance actually mean? Traditional Jedi interpretation suggested that balance meant the complete elimination of the dark side. The Sith would be destroyed, and only the light would remain. But Mace Windu's very existence challenged this interpretation. Here was someone who had achieved personal balance by integrating both light and dark aspects of the Force. This created a terrifying possibility in Yoda's mind. What if Mace Windu, not Anakin Skywalker, was actually the key to understanding true balance in the Force? What if the prophecy wasn't about destroying the dark side, but about learning to master it? From the expanded universe, we know that Yoda had several disturbing visions during the Clone Wars. In one particularly vivid vision, he saw a future where Jedi freely used both light and dark side techniques, where emotional attachment was not forbidden but carefully managed, where the distinction between Jedi and Sith became blurred beyond recognition. In these visions, Mace Windu stood at the center of this transformed order. Having proven that the traditional Jedi way was unnecessarily limiting, it was a future that simultaneously offered incredible power and terrifying uncertainty. Yoda's worst fears about Mace Windu seemed to crystallize during the final confrontation with Chancellor Palpatine. This wasn't just about stopping a Sith Lord, it was the ultimate test of everything Windu claimed to represent. When Windu declared his intention to kill Palpatine, rather than arrest him, we witnessed the philosophical divide between him and traditional Jedi teaching reach its breaking point. Yoda had always taught that a Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. Killing an unarmed prisoner, even a Sith Lord, violated the core principles of the Order. But from Windu's perspective, this was exactly why his approach was necessary. Traditional Jedi restraint had allowed Palpatine to manipulate the Republic for years. Sometimes, decisive action required moving beyond conventional morality. The tragedy is that both masters were partially correct. Yoda was right that Windu's willingness to make moral compromises was dangerous. But Windu was also right that pure adherence to Jedi doctrine had left them vulnerable to Palpatine's schemes. When Anakin intervened to save Palpatine, leading to Windu's death, it wasn't just the end of a great Jedi Master. It was the validation of Yoda's deepest fears. The path that Windu had walked, the integration of light and dark, the willingness to embrace moral ambiguity, had ultimately led to disaster. During his exile on Adaba, Yoda had decades to reflect on his fear about Mace Windu. The expanded universe suggests that these reflections fundamentally changed how he understood both the Force and his own role as a teacher. When Luke Skywalker came to train with him, Yoda was determined not to repeat the mistakes he believed had been made with both Anakin and Mace. He emphasized patience, emotional control, and absolute adherence to the light side of the Force. The aggressive, decisive action that characterized Windu's approach was exactly what Yoda worked to train out of Luke. But here's the fascinating irony. Luke's ultimate victory over the Emperor came not through pure Jedi orthodoxy, but through a moment that would have made Mace Windu proud. When Luke struck down Vader in anger, and then chose compassion, when he tossed aside his lightsaber and refused to kill, he demonstrated exactly the kind of emotional integration that Windu had attempted to master. Luke succeeded where both Anakin and Mace had failed, but he did so by finding a third path, one that acknowledged dark impulses without being consumed by them, one that chose compassion without abandoning strength. In many ways, Luke's approach vindicated aspects of both Yoda's and Windu's philosophies, while transcending the limitations of each. Yoda's greatest fear about Mace Windu wasn't that he would fall to the dark side. It was that he would succeed in proving the traditional Jedi way was incomplete. This fear was both justified and ultimately limiting. Windu's approach was indeed dangerous, and it did contribute to the circumstances that allowed Palpatine's final victory. But his willingness to question Jedi orthodoxy and explore new ways of understanding the Force also pointed toward possibilities that the Order had never considered. The real tragedy is that Yoda and Windu never found a way to reconcile their different approaches. If they had worked together to develop a more nuanced understanding of the Force, one that acknowledged both the dangers of darkness and the limitations of pure light, the galaxy might have been spared the horrors of the Empire. In the end, Yoda's fear about Mace Windu reveals as much about the limitations of the Jedi Order as it does about Windu himself. Sometimes our greatest fears arise not from what might go wrong, but from what might prove us wrong. What do you think? Was Yoda right to fear Mace Windu's approach, or did his fear blind him to important truths about the Force? Let me know in the comments below. And may the Force be with you.
Everything he had pledged his life to in order